So you guys rocked the parallel lines and all that last chapter. This chapter is talking about angles, but in a different way. If you remember from last, Math 10, we did a section on trigonometry. And the first part of chapter 3 is just going to remind us of that, and then it's going to do a little bit extra with it. So I have posted in the materials section this trigonometry worksheet, which I'm sure you can't see very well in this video, but I just wanted to reference it as I'm going through this so you know what steps go where when we're looking at a triangle. So I've drawn a triangle here, and the important thing is to see that it's a right triangle. So I know right away that my first job is going to be identifying the sides of the triangle, whether they're adjacent, hypotenuse, or opposite. So hypotenuse is always going to be the long side of the triangle across from the right angle. So we're going to write an H for hypotenuse there. Now as far as adjacent and opposite goes, we won't know which is which until we know which angle we're looking at. So if I'm looking at this triangle, let's see, that looks like maybe about a 35-degree angle. So I'm going to pick this angle. For this angle, the opposite side is this one, because it's across from it, opposite. The one that's adjacent to it, beside it, is down here, so that becomes my adjacent. So now that I've established that, I can move on to the next, well, I can just move on with solving what I want to solve. So let's say, for example, that they gave me the hypotenuse. They said that that was 4 centimeters. And they asked me for this side. Well, I'm not dealing with the adjacent at all. So I'm just going to get rid of it. I know I want my opposite, and I have my hypotenuse. So now I know what sides I'm interested in, and I can move on to step 2. Step 2 tells me, given those sides, what ratio would I use? So if I have opposite and hypotenuse, I look over on my sheet and I go, oh, sine has opposite and hypotenuse. If it was 2 different sides, I'd have picked one of the other ratios that used those sides. But this one is opposite and hypotenuse, so I'm going to use sine. So I can write out my little triangle that guides me through that. Sine of my angle is opposite over hypotenuse. So I'm going to set up my equation now, step 3, using the above guides and cover up the value that I'm solving for. So I'm solving for opposite, I cover up opposite, and it tells me I'm going to go sine of the angle times hypotenuse to get it. So I can actually write that out, opposite equals sine of the angle times hypotenuse. Then I just plug in my values. I go, okay, I want opposite. You can put a little p there if you want to, so it doesn't look like a 0. Opposite equals sine of 35 degrees times 4. So assuming that you've got one of the big fancy calculators, you can actually type in sine, it'll give you a bracket, you put the 35 in, you close the bracket, and then you can multiply it by 4 and it should be fine. Assuming that your calculator is in degrees mode. It has to be in degrees mode. I'll write that over here too, in case you can't see that one at the top. Has to be in degrees mode. If it's in rad or grad, which are the other two, R or G, it won't work. It's going to give you a bad value. So make sure that the mode of your calculator is set to degrees. If you have a smaller calculator, you might have to play with it a little bit to figure out whether you're supposed to put in the 35 and then hit sine, and it should give you a decimal, or whether you go sine 35. That's just going to depend on how your calculator works. You just need to play with it so you can learn exactly what you've got. So, hang on one sec. My bad, I just forgot to bring my calculator over with me. So if you've got one of these big guys, then I can hit mode and look here, and it says it's in radians. So then I have to page down and over and enter degrees. Now it's good. I second function quit. I'm out of there. And now what I'm going to do is, that's not looking very good. What I'm going to do is go sine 35, close bracket, times 4. Hit enter, and I get 2.29. So you don't want to round off too much on these ones. You need to use at least 2 decimal places, I would say, maybe even 3 to get the right value. Otherwise, your answers will just be maybe a little bit off of the ones in the back. So what we've done here is solved for the opposite side. This is 2.29, or I could have rounded it off to 2.3 centimeters. So that's just kind of a quick reminder of how to do a basic equation. On your sheet here, it says plug in numbers and solve. And then it'll say, remember when you have the angle and are looking for a side, use sine, cosine, tan. That's what we did. We just plugged it right in if we had the angle. If you have the sides and are looking for the angle, that's when you have to use second function. So I'll show you how to do that with a different triangle. So this time I'm going to set my triangle up like this. There's my right angle. And this time I'm going to say I want this side, but I have this side, and let's see. Actually, no. There we go. Now, I want the angle. I've got 2 sides, I need the angle. First thing I have to do is go, okay, if this is my side, I need to figure out which sides I have, because those will be the ones that I'm interested in. So this one's the opposite because it's across from the angle I'm interested in, and this one's touching the angle I'm interested in, so it's going to be the adjacent. Now, going down my little list, it says, given the sides, what ratio should you use? If I'm using opposite and adjacent, I look at these ones and go, well, sine's opposite and hypotenuse, that doesn't work. Adjacent and hypotenuse doesn't work. There's tan, opposite over adjacent. So my little guiding triangle here is going to be tan is opposite over adjacent. So next thing I do is set up my equation using the above guidelines and cover up the value I'm solving for. So I use this triangle, and I say I want the angle. So the angle is 10. It looks like I have to go opposite over adjacent. But remembering that if I have the sides and I'm looking for the angle, I have to use second function. So I'm going to go second function 10, bracket, opposite over adjacent, so that's 3 over 4. And then when I plug that into my calculator, I don't know if you can see this or not, but we're working on it. I'm going to go second function 10, 3 divided by 4, close bracket, and I'm going to get 36.87, so let's go 36.9. So this angle is 36.9 degrees. So that's your basics for all the work that we did last year, and that should help you get through most of the stuff in the introduction to the chapter.